Welcome, everybody, to the Steve and Bobby Show. My name is Steve Williams, and I'm here, of course, with Bobby Blea, too, like we do every week. I appreciate you guys for tuning in here at Mad Talk TV Studios here in the central part of Fresno. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. So I'm kind of excited today because today we have the Democratic chair, Mr. Rusty Hicks, in the house today. I appreciate Rusty Hicks. Let's put him on there. There he is. How you doing, sir?
How you doing?
It's good to be with you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for taking the time to do this as well. For our audience members and everyone out there, Rusty is our current California Democratic Party chair, and elections are coming up, and he's looking for our delegates to vote. As most of you know, that Steve and I are both delegates as well, and a lot of folks are always asking that question: what is the California Democratic Party? What is the DNC, Triple C? Like, what do these people actually do? And so we got a lot of viewers out there actually want to know what is the California Democratic Party and what do you do as a chair?
Well, I would say there's obviously the Democratic Party, which has a national presence with the DNC, and then you have a state presence, which is the California Democratic Party, and then we also have a county and local presence with county committees and Democratic clubs and grassroots organizations that ultimately make up the ecosystem of the Democratic Party. And the California Democratic Party obviously focuses primarily on state and federal races, federal elections, state and federal elections, but it also focuses on ensuring that we're successful at the local level as well. And I think historically our party has been focused on electing Democrats and winning elections and winning important campaigns. But it's my belief that our party can be and should be about much more, that it should ultimately about improving the lives of 40 million Californians by harnessing the power of 10 million Democrats here in California. And so I believe our party puts forward a vision that and values that ultimately improve the lives of 40 million Californians. And the role of the chair is really threefold. One, to be the spokesperson in chief, sharing those democratic values and that vision across the state in red, blue, and purple parts of the state. Being the chief fundraiser of the party, ensuring that we have the resources needed to fund the work of the party, and being the organizer in chief. Making sure that we have the infrastructure in place to get our message out, to communicate with 10 million Democrats, to ultimately improve the lives of 40 million Californians. So it's the largest state party in the country, and we've got a big responsibility, not only here in California, but being an example to other parts of the country.
So real quick, there's this, California is the largest GDP. I mean, we're fifth in the world in GDP. We're about 15% of the GDP of the United States. We're a mass, large ecocenter of money and finances, all kind of different stuff. So usually what happens here in California, usually in time, the rest of the country falls in line as well. That's why, what happens in the state is so important. And the Democratic Party, of course, owns a lot of seats here. I mean, we have a majority of congressional seats. Of course, we own the governor, the governorship, as well as some local seats. But what my concern is, one of the big things is healthcare. And healthcare is a big issue. In a lot of the constituencies around here where we are, healthcare is one of the main priorities of where our party should be going. Where are you at in the sense of single-payer health care?
Well, I was supportive of single-payer health care when I ran for chair in 2019. I've been supportive of it as chair, given it's in the preamble of the healthcare plank of our platform. And I support, AB 1400 or CalCare or Medicare for All or single payer or whatever term you want to put with Medicare for All or universal coverage. And I do think we have the opportunity to be an example. I talked about being an example to the rest of the country as to how you can make this happen. And while we organize to ensure universal coverage, what we've seen over the last 12 months is a global healthcare crisis, which has only made clear and exacerbated the real challenges and the pain and suffering that not only Californians are experiencing, that Americans are experiencing. And I think we have to, while we are fighting day in and day out and organizing to ensure that we get to a single payer system, I think we also have to be prepared. If we have the opportunity to cover undocumented adults and we have the opportunity to do that today, we should do that. If we have the opportunity to ensure emergency care for those in rural parts of the state that are 45 minutes away from rural health care, such that if they have a heart attack, they're basically not going to make it because they won't be able to have emergency coverage and support. I think people are suffering today, and there's a number of steps that we're going to have to take, that we're going to have to organize to make happen in order to a single payer system. I certainly support AB 1400, and I also support making sure that we can cover any individual, any Californian as quickly as possible, because they're suffering today.
So, being the chair, and I appreciate that. I'm all for a single payer or universal health. How are we, as a California Democratic Party, going to show that that's actually a priority? I don't feel that it has been at the forefront, and we've had tons of stuff go wrong in our country in the last 4 years, and we're trying to fix all of that. But how are you going to keep it, as a chair, this at the forefront or near the front? Advertising, marketing. When we say organize or organize, I don't know what that actually means from the party perspective and the responsibility of the California Democratic Party towards marketing this in the locales.
Well, I think the fact that you don't know what that means is a perfect example of makes it clear that our party has not done this work in the past. Mm-hmm. We have been focused on winning elections, and we've been pretty good about it. I would take issue with one comment that you made, Steve, about that we own X number of seats in the legislature, or we own X number of executive offices. We don't own these seats. We rent them every 2 years and every 4 years, and in the state of in the U.S. Senate seat every 6 years. So we have all these seats are incredibly hard fought every 2 years, 4 years, and 6 years. And I think we have to take that responsibility incredibly seriously. But the organizing work that we do on a year-round basis is ensuring that we're fighting as hard after Election Day as we do before Election Day. I think we've been really good about putting forward an incredibly progressive platform, passing resolutions, making strong statements. We've been incredibly good at winning elections, recruiting, endorsing, and supporting candidates for public office. And then far too often, we've said our job is done, when in reality, only half of our job is done. Because I believe the real power of our party is in regular Democrats all across the state. That's where the real power of our party is, and it's our responsibility to organize them just as hard as we did in the election after Election Day. It was here, Cesar Chavez reminded us, it's the way in which we organize our lives that tells us what we care about, what's important to us. And so, I think keeping universal coverage, keeping healthcare at the forefront of the work of our party is a way in which we show what's important to us and what we care about.
So I want to, so we're in, where we're at here locally, we are in Nunes's district. And Nunes has been a thorn to get rid of here. Very problematic. Of course, we've seen some of his shenanigans that he did during the Trump administration that was very problematic. I cannot understand for the life of me why we cannot get rid of this guy, especially here in the local area. Is the Democratic Party going to, in McCarthy as well in Bakersfield, he's just as problematic. What is it that the party is thinking of doing or planning on doing, or do they have any plan in getting the resources, maybe some money here in the local district, to fight Nunes, to get rid of McCarthy, to get rid of these very problematic congressional leaders?
Well, I think the first thing we have to be mindful of is we're in a redistricting election cycle, and so the deck is going to be reshuffled in many respects, and some seats will get easier and some seats will get harder. Ultimately, we want to be in position to take advantage of any and all opportunities that may present themselves, and also meet any challenge that we're confronted with. We invested heavily in the Central Valley in the 2020 election cycle with physical offices and talented organizers on the ground, and resources and tools for county committees and Democratic clubs and grassroots organizations and leaders. My hope is that we can continue to do that going forward on a year-round basis. We need to keep the organizing engine running on a year-round basis, not just focus on it 3, 6, or 9 months before election day. I do think redistricting probably brings some potential new opportunities, especially in the Central Valley. I think the trend in both the Nunes seat and the McCarthy seat have been away from Republicans, as California has trended away from Republicans. So we'll see what opportunities there are in redistricting, but we won't be waiting for redistricting. We'll begin the organizing well before then.
So, when you won at the last election, you did a tour all throughout California, listening to a lot of folks. I did appreciate that. Something that I talk about, though, whether it's on my Facebook or on our show, is I love the listening tour part. I really love more what comes out of it, the actions, the accomplishments that comes from listening, so that you don't have to do another listening tour. What have been some of those big accomplishments or things that you haven't hit yet that you are planning to still?
Well, certainly I've been in this role for the last 18 months. I frankly started my 58 county tour, which I did 58 counties in 58 days. I remember the date, February the 6th, 2019, was right there in Fresno at the county committee meeting. I believe it was on a Tuesday evening, where I started that tour. 58 counties in 58 days. That's it's not exactly the way to see the state. You want to take a little bit more time to enjoy the beauty of California. But it was really out of that tour that we stood up the statewide coordinated campaign of 2020. It was where the idea of being in a position to support, in particular, purple parts of the state, where there were battleground seats that were in play in 2020. Obviously, by mid-March and into April, we were in a global pandemic, and we moved what was a campaign focused on battleground counties into supporting all 58 counties. And we actually, I think that crisis forced us to rethink our work in a new and different way, which caused us to, frankly, in moving it all to the virtual space, we ultimately supported more parts of our state, a greater share of our state. We had 57,000 volunteers that engaged here in California and in other parts of the country, and I think moves us closer to more of a hybrid model of doing this work, where you don't necessarily have to have a physical brick and mortar office in every single location. There's a role for brick and mortar offices, but you can do a lot in the virtual space than we've ever done before. I really think being in a position, certainly didn't have the opportunity to move into that new hybrid model in 2020. I'm excited what 2021 and 2022 might bring as to what the new evolution of campaign work here in California will be.
So I want to kind of, because we talked about single payer health care, so I kind of want to touch on something that's another really kind of a big situation, which is the Green New Deal. And that seems to be a stickler, especially trying to sell it in other places, but it doesn't seem so hard here in California. And by the way, Biden introduced the new infrastructure, which is part of the Green New Deal. It's all the same. It's all part of the same, thing here. But in infrastructure, energy, and just the Green New Deal as a whole, where do you stand on that, and where are you on the Green New Deal?
Well, I think we've historically been presented with frankly, a false choice, an idea that you can have, you can either have clean air and clean water, or you can have a good job, but you can't have both. And I reject that false choice that we're often presented with. There are plenty of examples where, the environmental community and the labor community have come together and been stronger as a result of it. And as we transition to, a green energy economy, there are good jobs that are possible in that new green economy. Now, we have to work to ensure that those are good quality, in my view, union jobs where they have a collective voice on the job, but certainly possible. And a Green New Deal was certainly the focus, has been the focus over the last 3 or 4 years in different iterations. And it's interesting when Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez and John Kerry came together prior to President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris being elected. Magically, the Biden plan looks an awful lot like a Green New Deal, but it's presented as a jobs program. That's how the president is talking about this. It's a jobs generator to address a climate crisis. And I think that's an incredibly smart way, but a real opportunity for us to address a real challenge to transition away from fossil fuels and moving towards a green energy sector. And California can be a leader on that.
What's all right? I'm going to take back. I mean, you say it's pretty easy out here. We lots of oil in Kern County where McCarthy is, right? So there's a lot of money out there that will be defending that. You got Chevron, you got Shell, and all these folks that are out here.
Even in the Bay Area.
Right. But I mean, growing up as a kid in Kern County and seeing the oil pumps when you're driving out, I mean, it's everywhere, and it's livelihood for a lot of folks. So moving them from, working in the oil fields to something in green energy will be difficult, I think, in convincing folks out there, right? And that's one of the big reasons why I feel we don't have a big presence in like McCarthy's district, where it's very partisan. And so we are, as Democrats, are fighting fossil fuel companies. We are doing our best to make them focus on renewable energies and trying to move over to saving our planet. It's always difficult to do this. I've talked to some execs and they'd say, "Oh, we got 40 years left in shale. We don't need to move on to anything else, but we're researching it." How are we going to, as a party, get them to change their minds and listen to us? What are we going to do?
Well, I think there is a recognition, certainly amongst, I would say, Democratic voters and certainly within Democratic activists, the recognition that we cannot wait 40 years to begin to work on this issue when the science tells us we have less than 12 years, 10 years, a decade, essentially, to make a change. I think there's a broad-based recognition, whether you're in the, environmental community or in any other community, that oil, gas, coal, and I think coal is really being phased out a lot quicker than the other two, but certainly the fossil fuel industry is not going to be here forever. Its days are numbered. And frankly, I think our governor said, many of these industries are no longer a good investment, certainly not a good long-term investment. But while that industry is here, you're right, there are good quality, and in some cases, good quality union jobs that are in those industries. I think we have to, as a party, fight as hard to ensure that the new jobs that are being created are good quality jobs, just as hard as we push the fossil fuel industry to transition to a green economy or a green energy sector, and ensure that we actually have a transition and a path for workers in one industry to transition them to something else. So I think as we, fight to end jobs and end an industry that is in a sector that we don't want to be in, that we know is not good for our planet, we also got to fight hard to ensure that the jobs that are being created are good quality jobs at the same time. I think that oftentimes the view is that if it's in the green economy, that it's a good job. And that simply isn't a reality. And I think we've got to, as a party, continue to push, not only pushing our elected officials, not only supporting them when they do the right thing, not only holding them accountable when they don't, but we do that by ensuring that we're organizing 10 million Democrats across the state to bring that power to bear.
So let's talk about oil money. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. There's a lot of talk on certain campaigns accepting or taking oil money. So where is your campaign on this issue? Because I know that there has been, I don't know where the talk is in the sense of the truth, because sometimes there's this truth, and then there's the real truth. So there's talk that your campaign has accepted some Russian money. Is there truth to that?
Well, let me say something as well, because as a candidate, I know a lot of folks have you do things. I went out and signed a fossil fuel pledge saying I won't take money from the fossil fuel industry or executives, and there's different rules and stuff. So we're getting these, my Facebook or my advertisements, I'm getting your opposition, I don't know which groups are talking about that you once took a fossil fuel pledge and that you've taken money from fossil fuel industry. And rather than looking into it and doing things and finding one side or the other, and Steve and I talked about it, we'd like just to hear from you what that is without looking into it and see what is the situation, what has happened.
I'm happy to help you do your homework here.
There you go.
This afternoon. Well, one, the California Democratic Party has not taken a check from the oil industry since 2016. That was a ban put in place by Chair John Burton that was carried over to the former chair. I committed to that as a candidate for chair, and I've continued that as chair. So let's be clear about that. Two, as a candidate for chair in 2019, I signed the No Fossil Fuel Money Pledge, committing that I would not take fossil fuel money, coal, gas, oil, for any campaign that I was connected to or associated with. I have not, and I will not take money from the fossil fuel industry as defined by the pledge for any campaign I've been involved in, am currently involved in, or would be involved in the future. I'm not sure how I can say that any clearer. I signed the pledge, I stand by the pledge, and I'm committed to it. as chair of the party, I put in place a ad hoc task force to look at the process by which we could divest from a whole number of industries that we ultimately, folks did not want to take contributions from in our party, and ensuring that we were expanding our small dollar donor network to be able to divest as quickly as possible. That task force came back with a report or a series of recommendations that called on us to continue the ban that we had in place on the tobacco industry, the gun manufacturing industry, and the oil industry, and added 4 additional industries to that: for-profit prisons, for-profit colleges, for-profit healthcare, and the payday loan industry. So today we have a total of 7, double what we had from 2019. And we revisit that every 2 years in conjunction with our platform to reassess that list and hopefully add to it at some point in the future. At the same time, we significantly invested in our small dollar donor network and infrastructure to be able to, one, offset those industries that we are no longer taking contributions from, but also to be able to divest from others going forward. We raised more than $2 million in small dollar donor contributions in 2020. That's 8 times more than what we've historically done. It's 3 times the percentage of what we've historically done, and I hope to continue that into the future. The focus has been, that this is, there were contributions taken from natural gas, from Sempra. That's the line that is used in connection with the campaign. This was public information back in February of 2020. No one talked about it in March or April or May or June or July or August or September, October, November. We started talking about it in December of 2020 when we're in the course of a political campaign. And so I respect anyone and everyone's right to raise an incredibly important issue. It's unfortunate that it's been politicized because it, frankly, in my view, distracts from the progress that has been made to put a process in place to divest from not just one industry, but multiple industries going forward. So to answer your question, is my campaign funded by oil contributions? Absolutely not. I have a 527. All of my reports are public. You can go look for yourself.
Mm-hmm. It always blows my mind when we're working amongst each other and then these accusations are made. And, people made accusations. I was taking money from corporations. I remember doing a questionnaire one time. Do you take money from executives from the healthcare industry? I helped fund my own campaign. It was me. I can't say anything about it. But when you just said right now what happened in February, I know it didn't get brought up to December. Can you clarify what happened in February then? You said Sempra and natural gas company. Something happened where you took funds, or?
No, there's a contribution taken from Sempra Energy, and there was contributions taken over the course of 2020. No one talked about those over the course of 2020, even though it was public information in February of 2020. I guess my point is that it was an important issue then. It's an important issue now. It'll be an important issue a year from now. But it's being talked about in the context of a political election, which politicizes an incredibly important issue. And no one is talking about the progress that we've made. Nobody's talking about the expansion of a small dollar donor network. And frankly, in my view, does a disservice to an incredibly important issue.
Okay. We're about headed. First, before we go, I want to say something. You got another question?
One thing.
Okay.
One thing real quick. I really care about us here in the Central Valley. I do, and we've talked before. But you know, and all the things that you talk about, we're going to have to do a lot of work and organizing and, you know, to make change happen. We'll see how the district lines change. But here in the Central Valley, in Clovis, they're doing voting at large. And I know there's supposed to be rules where it's supposed to change in November. If they don't change next year to have voting by districts, which I think is very important to make change here, because the more Democrats we get into office, because I think in some of those districts we'll get more Democrats in office, that it's going to get more people out excited to vote. More people will be able to see how the Democratic leadership can change in those areas, and I think that'll make a big difference. Will the California Democratic Party get involved in something like that?
Well, I mean, the way this issue has been resolved throughout the state is, you know, filing a lawsuit. The precedent on this issue is pretty clear. The path to moving local municipalities to doing the right thing, to getting to a place of voting by district, has been done through the legal process. And so, you know, this is not. At this point in time, this is not an issue that the state party has engaged in, frankly, because local municipalities and local activists have simply, you know, put together filed suit, and many times they've been able to get the local municipality to move because the law is simply on the side of moving to districts.
Okay, so we have to file suit first. You guys won't join
No,
us.
I think that. No, not first, but I think that's the way to do it. There's a lawyer in the west side of Los Angeles that has been sort of the leader, and I'm happy to give you his information. He's been the leader in this space of taking on this issue of moving a lot of districts, a lot of local municipalities to by district voting. Been incredibly successful doing it. That's the easiest and the cleanest way to do it. If you can't move, if you can't, you know, change the makeup, the composition of the board that won't make a decision itself, that's the cleanest and probably the quickest way to do it.
Okay. Before we leave, I want to say something. You're still in the Navy Reserve, right?
No, I did 10 years, and so I'm no longer formally in the Navy Reserve. But
okay, because I'm a retired Marine, retired in 2009. But I appreciate your service, though.
Appreciate you, Rusty. He was just going to talk too fast.
I was going to talk some mess, but
I'm only a Navy intel guy. You know, I mean, I would never mess with them.
You're in the smart department.
When I was deployed, I was in a joint environment, and so I've spent more time in the sand than I've spent on a ship by a long time. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate you for coming on the Steve and Bobby Show. I'd like to, you know, this kind of conversation is important, especially for people here locally where we're at. That's why we got to have these conversations, ask these questions. Me and Bobby went out, especially to some of the people that we know here, some of the delegates, asked them, you know, to ask us some questions. So I appreciate you answering those candidly, and I appreciate you for coming on the Steve and Bobby Show. Thank you, Mr. Hicks.
Thank you, Rusty.
You appreciate the opportunity. It's great to be with you.
Thank you. All right, people. Today is, what is today?
31st.
31st.
Cesar Chavez Day.
Cesar Chavez Day today. So remember, my mom walked with Cesar Chavez. So I'm kind of proud of that because I keep saying that every time his name comes up. Anyway, I appreciate you guys for tuning in to Steve and Bobby Show. Of course, we're here in Fresno, California at the Mad Talk TV studios. Bobby, you got anything, sir?
Thank you guys for watching. Please catch the other shows. Catch you on the other side.